I didn't say a word when they showed up that morning. 3 of them, standing in a neat little line outside my fence like they owned the place. The HOA president, her vice chair, and some man I didn't recognize, probably their enforcement officer. The president was waving papers, voice sharp, pretending to sound official. I let her talk. When she finally paused for air, I handed the sheriff a single sheet, the temporary restraining order ID, filed and won just hours earlier. Watching her read the header, seeing that flicker of panic when she realized they were legally barred from setting foot on my property, that was all the satisfaction I needed. It's funny how quiet victory sounds. When I bought this place, I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for peace. My wife and I had spent years in the city, scraping by, surrounded by noise and rules we didn't make. When we found this small acre on the edge of the county, half wooded, half open, it felt like freedom. The house wasn't big, but it was ours. I built a simple steel gate across the gravel driveway. Nothing fancy, just something solid to mark our space and keep stray dogs from wandering in. It had been there for decades, before the HOA ever existed. Most mornings I'd sip coffee on the porch, watching sunlight filter through the oak trees, while my wife tended to her little vegetable patch. Neighbors waved, kids biked past. It was simple, calm, and good. That's all I wanted. To be left alone. Then came the first letter. It was folded neatly, taped to my mailbox, printed on HOA letterhead like something from a corporate office. Non-conforming barrier, it said. Please remove the gate or submit modification approval. I read it twice, thinking it had to be a mistake. My property sat outside the official subdivision boundary. The HOA had no jurisdiction here. I called their office, explained politely that they'd overstepped. The woman on the phone said, all residents within the community are expected to comply. I told her I wasn't within the community. She put me on hold for 6 minutes, came back, and said, you'll still need to submit the form. I tried to play along. I filled out their modification requests, attached photos, even highlighted the county parcel map showing where their authority ended. Weeks passed. No answer. Then a second notice appeared, more aggressive this time. Failure to comply may result in enforcement action. I sent an email to the HOA board, short, factual, attached the same documents again. The reply was smug. Your continued defiance will result in daily fines. That was the moment I realized what I was dealing with. This wasn't about a gate. It was about control. A week later, I came home late from work and noticed the gate hanging slightly open. The lock was missing. The chain was on the ground. For a second, I thought maybe it was theft. Then I saw a folded note taped to the post. Unauthorized lock removed for compliance. HOA letterhead again. No signature. They'd come onto my land in the middle of the night and cut my lock off. When I showed my wife, she looked scared. That's when my anger settled into something colder. I didn't yell. I didn't call anyone. I just walked back inside, made coffee, and opened my laptop. If they wanted to play official, I'd make it official. I started with property law. The county's public access database showed exactly what I already knew. The HOA's plat map stopped 47 feet short of my driveway. My land wasn't part of the recorded development. I pulled my deed, dated 1998, 4 years before the HOA existed. Then I went digging. County records, subdivision filings, board meeting minutes. I found an amendment from 2003 where they'd expanded enforcement jurisdiction without proper owner consent. It was invalid from the start. I documented everything. Photos of the missing lock, the footprints in the gravel, the security camera timestamp showing 2 people walking up to my gate at 2:13 a.m. I backed it all up in 2 drives. I even printed it in Then I sent a final, formal letter to the HOA, stating clearly that they had committed trespass and unauthorized tampering with private property. I cited the specific state code section 13451. They didn't respond. Instead, 2 days later, a board member dropped off another violation notice, this time claiming my fence interfered with emergency access. The same fence that had existed since the late 80 segundos. That's when I realized they weren't ignoring me. They were testing me, seeing how far they could push before I'd give up. I didn't give up. I got strategic. I started a binder. Everything. Dated. Labeled. Cross-referenced. I printed the original subdivision plat, circled the legal boundary, and marked my parcel just outside it. I made copies of every email, every notice, every photograph. I even went to the county archives and pulled the HOA as original incorporation documents. Buried in those pages, I found the line that would end this fight. The association shall have no authority to regulate or restrict access to private property beyond the platted subdivision area. That was it. They had written their own limit into their founding papers. I stayed quiet for a few days, acting normal. Then, around midnight on a Friday, I compiled everything into a formal complaint. I drafted an affidavit describing the trespass, attached my evidence, and filed it electronically with the county court system under unlawful interference with private property. It took less than 30 minutes. At 8:17 the next morning, I got an email notification. The judge had reviewed my filing and granted a temporary restraining order, effective immediately. The HOA and its board members were prohibited from entering, altering, or attempting to enforce any rule on my property until the hearing date. That morning, I drove into town, bought a new stainless steel lock, heavier than the first, and reinstalled it before breakfast. Then I called the sheriff's department to notify them of the order. The deputy said he'd be glad to serve it personally. By 10 o'clock, the HOA president and 2 board members were back at my gate, waving papers trying to sound in charge. The deputy pulled up right behind me. I didn't say a word, just handed him the restraining order. He read it aloud while they stood there, stunned. When he reached the line about no contact or interference with a petitioner's property, the president went pale. She started mumbling something about jurisdictional confusion. He just shook his head and said, "Ma'am, this order came from a judge. Step back." That was the quietest I'd ever seen them. Within a week, the whole neighborhood was talking. Some people were angry at the HOA. Others shocked it had gone that far. The restraining order triggered a review by their insurance company, which froze their liability coverage pending investigation. That meant no meetings, no enforcement, no fines. The HOA was effectively paralyzed. Neighbors started sharing stories. One woman told me the HOA had fined her for hanging wind chimes. Another said they tried to make her remove her solar panels. Everyone had been too afraid to fight back. My case gave them an opening. A few even thanked me for standing up. I told them it wasn't bravery, it was paperwork. The hearing came 2 weeks later. I walked in with my binder and a quiet smile. The HOA's lawyer tried to argue that they believed my property was under their jurisdiction. The judge interrupted him and asked, "Did you verify that before entering the property?" He hesitated. That was it. The judge extended the restraining order for 90 days and ordered them to pay court costs. 3 weeks later, the HOA president resigned. 2 board members followed. The new leadership amended their bylaws, explicitly excluding my property, and 3 others. From HOA authority, the neighborhood calmed down after that. Now, when I step out in the morning, coffee in hand, I hear the gate creak softly as I unlock it. The lock still gleams, solid, untouchable. Sometimes I see the new HOA president drive by. He gives a polite wave. I nod back. No tension, no drama, just peace. That's the thing about power. People think it's loud, but real power is quiet. It's evidence, timing, and knowing the law better than the people who try to twist it. The HOA hasn't bothered me since. They even replaced their compliance committee with something called community relations. I get their emails now. Soft, friendly, full of gardening tips. They stay far away from my gate. I keep the restraining order framed in my study, not out of pride, but as a reminder. Peace isn't given. It's protected. Now they wave when I drive through, or they turn away. Either way, it's quiet again.